Oregon Commission for the Blind held their regular board meeting on October 3rd, 2025 at 1 p.m. in the afternoon.
1:02 p.m. Two notifications.
Hi, it is currently 1:02 p.m. and this meeting is called to order. Max, would you please take roll?
Certainly. Chair Nadira Broom is noted as present. Lillian Goodman. I don't see Lillian yet, but she's planning to be here. Laurel Hudson.
Present.
Dr. Labrum.
Present.
Stephanie McGarry.
Present.
And Scott Wall.
Present.
Madam Chair, we do have a quorum.
Thank you, Max. All right, we now proceed with the approval of the minutes from the August 1st meeting. So commissioners, I'm looking for a motion to approve those minutes, which I hope you all got a chance to look over. Any motions?
This is Scott. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as delivered.
Thank you, Scott. I'm looking for a second.
I'll second those.
Okay, thank you.
Stephanie Sokenson.
Thank you, Stephanie. All right, Max, you have to do the roll call. Well,
certainly.
the roll.
Nadira.
I approve.
Laurel Hudson.
I approve.
Dr. Labrum.
I approve.
Stephanie.
Approve.
Scott.
I approve.
And I'll put Lillian down as an abstain or not present. The motion passes.
Okay, thank you, Max. All right, so we'll move on with the audience introduction.
Oh, first I'm going to introduce Corey Marshall, who's sitting beside me. Corey is an executive support specialist here at the agency, and he's going to be my backup if I ever get hit by a car or don't come to work on a board meeting day. We'll begin with Daisha Johnson, our executive director, followed by Ron Stewart, business enterprise program director, Angel Hale, our vocational rehabilitation services director, Jonathan Scramenti, who is our workforce innovation manager. Jim Portillo is the director of the Orientation and Career Center for the Blind. I see that Lillian's joined us. And then beyond that, I have Clay France, who is our internal auditor. He'll be making a presentation today. Mary Michelle Sosny is here from the Legislative Fiscal Office. And have I missed anybody else? Well, thank you. I think everybody's accounted for. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for coming. All right, this is where we would have public comment. Is there any public comment today? All right. Hearing. I'm sorry, I thought someone was saying something. Okay. All right, hearing none. We now move on with the executive director report. Daisha?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, commissioners. And in October, I will always do the same thing, which is to wish you a happy new year. It is the start of one of the fiscal years that we recognize here at the agency, which is the federal fiscal year that goes October 1st through September 30th. And so later in my report, I'll provide an update on some federal activities that you may be hearing about in the news. But it is indeed Happy New Year to you, at least Happy Federal New Year. October is always an exciting time for us. There are a couple of key commemorations that are related to the work of the agency. The first being National Disability Employment Awareness Month is the month of October, where we celebrate the work of the staff that are involved with helping Oregonians who are blind with employment. And we do a variety of activities that are both business engaging and consumer focused to help us commemorate the National Disability Employment Awareness Month. And this year's theme is celebrating value and talent, recognizing the value, talent American workers with disabilities add to our workplaces and economy, and highlighting their achievements. And certainly we believe at our core that a workforce that reflects our communities, including individuals who are blind, makes our economy and our workforce stronger and better together. So we're really excited to do that. I noticed that Jonathan joined us today. He's our Workforce Innovation Manager. He leads the business relations team that's involved with a lot of statewide activities commemorating the National Disability Employment Awareness Month with our partner agencies at the Department of Human Services. And if you have access to my voice newsletter, there are links to the Department of Human Services press release that shows all of those statewide events that OCB is joining and participating in. Any questions about National Disability Employment Awareness Month? All right, and a little bit more specific and granular to our work related to blindness rehabilitation. Every October 15th also marks White Cane Awareness or White Cane Safety Day, which is really a celebration of the white cane as not only a symbol of independence, but also a device of safety and awareness. Every year there is some activities around the state that we participate in to commemorate this special day. We also post information in our lobbies of all of our offices, and we really think about it as two things. One, to really celebrate the blindness in terms of the cane and its symbol of independence and the power of the cane to be able to allow someone to be independent in their homes and communities. But it's also a really good opportunity for us to provide education and outreach to drivers to understand the white cane law and the importance of yielding to pedestrians who carry a white cane, even if they're not in a crosswalk, but just navigating their streets and environments in the community. There is an event that is happening here in Portland that we are excited to participate in that is in collaboration with the City of Portland and the Portland Bureau of Transportation. That event is going to be a white cane and guide dog safety awareness walk, which is next week on the afternoon of Wednesday, October 8th. Let's hope for good weather. From 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock in the afternoon at the Multnomah County Holgate Library, which is at 7905 Southeast Holgate Boulevard here in Portland, in the parking lot. So the plan is to walk around the Holgate Library in the neighborhood to raise awareness of white cane and guide dog users. And there will be a connection in the community room, followed by some opening remarks and a little half-mile walk and a return to the community room for some white cane trivia. So for any trivia connoisseurs out there, as well as light refreshments. Questions about the White Cane Awareness Day or events? Are commissioners aware of any other activities or events happening around the state that you would also like to share? All right, I'll move on. The other thing I just wanted to call your attention to is that we are excited. You will hear me refer to an acronym called CSAVR, which is Council of State Administrators in Vocational Rehabilitation. It's our national association of agencies similar to ours that receive federal vocational rehabilitation funds under the Rehabilitation Act. And CSAVR has launched a campaign called 100 Stories in 100 Days And we're about halfway through, a little bit more than halfway through of that campaign. And every state and territory in the country has been challenged to submit stories of successful individuals who have obtained a job and career in the field of their choosing as a result of vocational rehabilitation services. It also highlights successful businesses who have been able to hire and retain talent of job seekers with disabilities. And it's really, really exciting. We were able to feature a couple of stories already. One of them being Sal Barraza, one of our business enterprise program entrepreneurs. And we are preparing to also showcase a couple of other stories. It is very touching if you're ever having a bummer day and you want to just be reminded of the importance of the work and the power of vocational rehabilitation. CSAVR on their main landing page has all of the stories listed by state, and their website is very easy. It's www.csavr.org. Max just posted in the chat too. Thank you, Max. And the stories range widely in terms of job types and individuals' type of disability they experience, and their personal backgrounds and stories are quite amazing. But it's just a reminder of the power and the impact of this incredible work and the collective impact around the country on increasing the participation rate in the workforce of individuals who experience disability, and the impact that the public VR program has as a whole. So I encourage you to go to the website and just kind of take a look at some of the stories. And then you will, of course, see that Oregon is well represented in that campaign thus far. And we have a couple additional stories to contribute as well. Questions or comments about the 100 Stories in 100 Days campaign? All right. Moving on, Madam Chair, I am standing in for Kat Martin, our CFO, who is recovering from surgery and out for a little bit. And so I'm going to present both the donations and the financial report. You received a copy of 2 forms of the donations report, one of them being a summary of the most recent biennium that we just completed, June 30th, and the other one being the first month of this current biennium. And she typed me up notes, so let me get to the notes on that. All right, the balance as of the end of June 30th, 2025 was $788,748.07. And then the balance as of the end of July 31st, 2025 was $787,639.59. Questions on the donations reports? All right. All right, moving on to the financial report. October is always a little bit of a challenging time because of the timing of the biennium and year-end close. So there's a prolonged period of time where we're actually closing out the most recent state fiscal year. And in the case of the odd years, like 2025, we're also closing out the state fiscal year and as well as the biennium. So we're just kind of finishing up the close of the 23-25 biennium, while we're actually ramping up the start of the 25-27 biennium. And the 25-27 biennium starts with a kind of reconciliation and audit of the approved budget, the legislatively approved budget that gets goes through the legislative process and gets entered into the budget information system. And our budget is gone through the audit process, but while all of that's happening behind the scenes, they front load a percentage of our budget that's basically just a straight fraction percentage to get us started on the first part of the 25-27 biennium. Our legislatively approved budget, to do a summary of the most recent 23-25 biennium, was $30,774,900, 67 positions, 67 full-time equivalents. That included $8.497 $650 in general fund, $1.1 million in other funds, and $21.1 million in federal fund limitation. We closed out the 23-25 biennium, having fully expended all of our general fund, our state issued funds, and we expended, looks like $1.09 million of other funds and $21.044 of other funds, which was 3.7% under our approved budget. So we were super tight. We were only 42,000 under in other funds and only 93,000 under budget in our federal fund limitation, which is, you want to spend all your funds as a client-driven agency, but we certainly were super tight at the end of the biennium as we've been talking about our expenditures going up. Any questions about the wind up of the 23-25 biennium? All right, I'm going to shift to the 25-27 biennium, which began July 1st of 2025 and goes through June 30th of 2027. Just as a reminder, our legislatively adopted budget includes $9.5 million in general fund, $1.1 million in other fund limitation, and $22.1 million in federal fund limitation, a total of $32,831,282. It retains 67 positions and 67 FTE. So the biennium, as I just mentioned, kicked off July 1st, and within for the first month of July, and trying to project out 23 months of expenditures, Kat is projecting that we will basically be really tight and fully expend all of our allotted resources at this point. One of the things that makes it a little bit challenging for projecting one is just really early to tell. The other thing is we pay a lot of our state government service charges up front during the early stage of the biennium. So we get the appropriation and then we pay a lot of bills largely to the Department of Administrative Services, which is for oftentimes a period of the full federal or state fiscal year. So we pay a lot of bills right away, and then it looks like, the budget is crazy. So it's really hard to do straight line projections during this early stage. Questions about any of the financial reports? Kat called to check this morning, and I did tell her that we miss her already. And we look forward to having her back because I definitely should not quit my day job. I'm not an accountant.
Mhm.
All right, I will move on to a federal update, and I'm certainly happy to provide any additional information that you would like, commissioners. If you Google federal government right now, I think you will find out exactly what I'm going to share with you. Typically, Congress has to either by October 1st or September 30th fund the government by approving appropriation bills for the full federal fiscal year of October 1st through September 30th, or and more often than not, as you will recall from previous federal fiscal years, they will approve what's called a continuing resolution, or as they get close to the beginning of the federal fiscal year, they will fund what they oftentimes refer to as short-term funding bills that will fund for a portion of the federal fiscal year while they try to kind of hammer out a full federal appropriation year. It is not uncommon for us to be basically in a continuing resolution for at least half of a federal fiscal year. So that is something that we typically will experience. What is more unusual is that since the first time since 2017, we are in what's called a federal government shutdown. And that means that Congress did not approve a full appropriation for the entire fiscal year, and they also did not approve a short-term funding bill. So that always freaks employees out because they're like, okay, does the federal shutdown mean that the state of Oregon is shut down? And there is no direct connection between the operations of the federal government in the event of a federal shutdown and OCB's operations, which is a good thing. So what does happen, though, is that federal employees are what are called furloughed. So they are not allowed to actually work, with a few exceptions, and those would be like the direct appointees from the president and some high-level career service employees are still able to work. The remainder of the employees, and pretty much everyone at RSA, with rare exception, are furloughed right now, which means our ability to get questions answered, to get approval for anything that requires prior approval from our federal funding partners, all of that work is completely stopped. Because we're used to having continuing resolutions, one of the things that we try to maintain is some level of a federal cash balance. This is why it's important. So we have basically, we don't have any 26 money because they didn't appropriate any yet, but we have federal fiscal year 25 funds for vocational rehabilitation, which is our largest grant, that is sufficient to tide us over in the event that this federal shutdown is short term. So we are not in any particular concerning position right at this moment. But we, for example, have fully expended and have been for some time our Older Blind Award, our federal award. So we have no other money to draw except our Vocational Rehabilitation Award from federal fiscal year 25. And with Kat being out, I'm the one that is doing those federal draws. So there's one bank account in the federal sky, and that's our Vocational Rehabilitation Award. Everything else is having to be charged to our state appropriations, which again, we can do for a little bit, but if it's prolonged, it becomes more and more problematic from a cash availability standpoint. And I looked about an hour ago, and it looks like there was a fourth attempt to have a continuing resolution that has passed the House but is awaiting a Senate vote. And it is still procedurally being blocked in the Senate. So there is no action as of about an hour ago on the kind of standoff in Washington, D.C. That's happening in the Senate. Questions about that?
This is Nadira. So, when might it start to be a bigger problem? A time frame?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's weeks, not days. I mean, it's becoming more and more uncomfortable, Nadira, but we do have some flexibility. The reality is with a short-term shutdown, it doesn't feel practically that much different than if we were in a continuing resolution. So, for example, when they passed the most recent continuing resolution that in March of this year that funded the government through the end of the federal fiscal year, September 30th, the vote happened in the middle of March. We actually didn't get our award where we actually got notification that we could start drawing money until almost the end of April. So we're used to having a gap between when they actually appropriate funds and when we actually get the award where it hits our bank account. So we try to be super prudent about making sure that we have some cash reserves for this very reason. And as we kind of go into future topics around order of selection and talking about that, you can kind of get a sense as to the importance of not using every penny that you have in real time. And this is exactly why, because we have to be able to meet payroll, we have to be able to pay our bills. And we have several weeks at times in which we have to wait for the feds to come through with their finishing up of their appropriations. So we're okay for a little bit.
Thank you.
Any other questions? We have the benefit, the Council of State Administrators and Vocational Rehabilitation, they have staff on the Hill. We also have a membership in the National Council of State Agencies for the Blind that have staff on the Hill as well. So we will get regular updates as we kind of know where things are sitting. The word on the street is that they were going to make some additional attempts at negotiating and expect another voting round. Hopefully they'll get to voting early next week. So all signs are pointing to eventual resolution, but until they finish it, we just never know. All right, I'll move on to the state update. And one of the benefits of being around a long time is you can see a cycle of how kind of things happen from a revenue perspective. And so we are, as we've mentioned in earlier meetings, we are entering a time of where we're seeing a rise in unemployment and likely a decline in available revenue to fund government. And state government in Oregon pretty much relies on a few main sources. The first being corporate income taxes. So as businesses are making less money, they're paying less taxes. And then personal income taxes. So as the unemployment rate rises, and there are fewer Oregonians that are actually working, they are paying less state income tax. And so again, less money goes into funding state services and state government. So those things are happening right now at the same time as a reminder there was a significant impact to the services that are offered to Oregonians as a result of the House Resolution 1, the big beautiful bill, as it was oftentimes referred to over the summer, that reduced services in areas related to medical insurance for Oregonians, as well as food assistance and other related type social supports. So we're in a combination of having a decline in revenue just because the economy has changed, but we also have this gap of services that we had assumed that the federal government would be covering a large portion of the costs of, that the legislature is going to have to be in a position of determining whether or not they're going to try to fill that hole, all or a portion of. So this has created a unique circumstance in terms of it's not been this way for the past many years, where there is significantly less revenue being projected for the available or desired service levels than there is money in the bank to be able to fund them. So when that happens, because of the timing, the legislature did their best job at predicting, based on the available revenue that they had available to them when they made budget decisions. In the May forecast was their last available budget information that they had available to them before they left at the end of June. So the most recent forecast that came out at the end of August had that revenue down. So over time, that left a hole in the budget, I think about $300 million, if I recall. So there is a gap of about $300 million from what the revenue forecast in August showed that the legislature relied on in the May forecast. So it's about $300 million difference. So we're anticipating that there will be some level of kind of readjusting agency budgets in what we oftentimes refer to as the short session. When the legislature comes into town in 2026, we anticipate there will likely be some level of reductions. This is when it is helpful to be statistically small, in that reducing the Commission for the Blind's appropriation, we get a very, very small percentage of this general fund overall, less than 0.5% of the total general fund in Oregon goes to the Commission for the Blind. So because we're small, it is possible that we will either be held harmless and not have to face the level of reductions, or hopefully not have to bear a significant percentage of the reductions that other agencies do. There is conversations happening for agencies to prepare for up to about 5% of reductions of general fund. To give you a sense as to what that would be an impact to us, it's about $500,000 of a reduction. Where that gets complicated and problematic is that 500,000 would be actually multiplied in terms of an impact, because all of those resources are used to leverage federal funds. So if we were to take the reductions in the area of older blind, for example, and the potential impact would be $9 of federal funds that we wouldn't be able to leverage or match. And in the vocational rehabilitation program, where we have a 4-to-1 match, the impact would be potentially up to $4 for every $1 reduced. So again, this is very early on. And I will say that typically the commission has been able to navigate these waters with two main elements to articulate to the legislature. The first being that we're small and bearing the, any statistically significant impact of the reductions really does disproportionately affect the specialized services that we provide. And Oregonians can't really get the services anywhere else.
Mhm.
And then the second point being obviously the impact of any state general fund reductions does impact the potential loss of federal funds to come to Oregon. So it does multiply the effect of any potential reductions. And historically, the legislature and the Legislative Fiscal Office has been receptive to both of those conversations with us. Questions about the state changes in the economy? The other source of funds, which doesn't directly impact us, but it is a loss to the state of just total funds to work with, is as the economy gets tighter, people pay into the lottery less. So lottery funds pay for a lot of things, including parks and other types of services. So again, the legislature having fewer dollars to work with overall. The lottery funds are also projected to be down because people have less expendable income and are less likely to be expending money on lottery and related services. All right. Any other final questions for me? All right, not hearing any, Madam Chair, that concludes my report.
All right, thank you very much, Daisha. All right, we move on with new business, starting with the 2025 risk assessment.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Commissioners. It's a pleasure to be here. I am Clay France. I'm the internal auditor for the agency. And you may recall that once a year, for those of you that have been around a bit, we talk briefly about risk assessment. And so it's that time of year. I plan to just take a couple of minutes to talk about, at a high level, what is risk assessment and why do we do it? How do we do our annual update and what did we find this year? And then what are the next steps? So please feel free to ask questions at any time. There was a report provided to you in advance. Thank you, Max, for doing that. So at a high level, what is risk assessment and why do we do it? So you may recall that our strategic plan identifies 6 program objectives, and they all talk to how the agency helps Oregonians who are blind. So a risk is just the possibility that an event will occur that could impact our ability to achieve our objectives. So it's anything that could get in the way of us achieving our objectives. And a risk assessment is just a systematic approach to evaluating these risks and their potential impact to the agency. So strong, healthy organizations effectively manage their risks. And there are 4 steps in an effective risk management program. The first being identifying and assessing the risks. What are they? Evaluating these risks and the controls in place to address the risk. And then reviewing the effectiveness of those internal controls. And then implementing strategies to achieve an acceptable risk level. So we started this process in 2020. And we update the risk assessment annually. And when I say we, I meet with the leadership team. We walk through risk by risk. We have an extensive risk log. We review the risks from the prior year's work. We reassess the rankings. So we rank each risk on the impact that it would have to the organization and then the likelihood of it happening. And these are ranked high, medium, and low. So for this year's update, we added a couple of new risks, and not a surprise, they talk about resources and economic volatility, things like that. We deleted a couple of risks that are no longer applicable to the organization. And we ended up with a total risk log that has 82 inherent risks. And when I say inherent risk, It's the risk that events would pose if no controls or mitigating factors were in place. So it's just what are the risks that would be inherent to any agency like ours? And it's important to note that just because we identify these risks does not mean they have occurred. So for this year, of these 82 inherent risks that we have, 7 we have deemed as high risk areas, 70 are medium risk, and 5 are low risk. And we have included the top 12 of these risks in your report. Of these 12 risks, they're kind of spread across the agency. 5 are in the area of operations. 4 fall into the vocational rehabilitation program. 1 is in the independent living program. 1 is in our finance area, and 1 is in the information technology area. So the good news for all of these risks that we identify, we create action plans to make sure they're being sufficiently addressed. And at this time, we believe that these action plans adequately address the risks at this time. These action plans consist of management monitoring of the risks on a regular basis. Some of them receive quality assurance reviews on a set schedule. And others, we use that information to impact the internal audit plan for the following year. And so you'll notice a couple of the action plans for the risks include an internal audit of that area. And so that's what is up next for us. We'll create the internal audit plan for the future, for the coming year, and present that to you at your next meeting in December. So at a high level, that's an overview of our risk assessment for this year. I'd be happy to answer any questions. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Clay. All right, we move on with strategic planning 2026-2029.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Daisha again. And commissioners, we wanted to just continue the conversation in preparation for updating our strategic plan. We created a business routine some time ago that basically we have a strategic plan now that you approved in 2024, and it goes through 2027. But as we're building out, if you can imagine that in a couple short months, we will start the development of the 27-29 budget. And in that process, we have found it to be incredibly helpful to have the commission's leadership and insights in the updating of our strategic plan as we're developing our budgets for the upcoming biennium. So in that routine, we would be updating our strategic plan in 2026, which, let's be honest, it's October. It's going to be here before we know it. So why this is such an impactful time to be updating our strategic plan is, as we mentioned earlier, we're shifting from, I would say, a resource sufficient environment to more of a scarcity environment, in which we're going to have certainly more competition with being able to continue to compete for available resources to fund necessary services in Oregon. But we're also going to continue to experience, I'm anticipating, the growth in terms of potential population of older adults and working age adults who may need our services. And that's when having a really good strategic plan and priorities is, in my opinion, so important, because we never have the perfect amount of resources. We're always trying to juggle, but we really are going into a time that I think we're going to have to make some potential difficult choices. around how we can best utilize the resources to serve as many Oregonians who are blind as possible. So the strategic plan is, I just encourage you to be thinking about the strategic plan. And just as a quick high level reminder, the first focus area is around workforce participation. And our focus was to increase the workforce participation rate and job retention of job seekers who experience vision loss. Aging in Oregon, and that was really around access and timeliness of independent living services for seniors. A focus on succession planning, helping to recruit and retain specialized staff who deliver services to Oregonians. Business and community, which is really strengthening partnerships, improving access and opportunities for all Oregonians who are blind. And the last one being around customer service and strengthening our business processes, resources, and infrastructure to ensure that we're being responsible to the needs of all of our customers. So those are our current priorities. And really the ask of you over the next 3 or 4 meetings will be for us to be thinking about those priorities. And in a resource limited environment, if we want to consider under your leadership refining the priorities a little bit, being a little bit more focused or granular in the areas that we're looking at, and potentially even eliminating something that we think that even though it was a good idea a couple of years ago, that we simply may not be able to afford with this resource limited environment to be able to continue to focus on strategically. So that's pretty much all. I just wanted to kind of tease that out a little bit as we kind of think about it. We'll have additional conversations, certainly in December, a more robust conversation in February. By February, we hope to have more specific instructions out of the governor's office in terms of what she would like agencies to do in the budget development process. And for sure, by April and June of 2026, we would have some refined strategic priorities. And then my goal would be by June of next year to have an updated strategic plan to present to you for your review and approval. Any questions, comments, things that you want the agency to be considering as we kind of prepare for this upcoming strategic planning cycle?
This is Scott. Just have a question. Is this something that's going to be ongoing part of our work when we meet to go over these priorities? And my first time going through this, so just wondering what that looks like.
That's a great question, Commissioner Wall. And yes, all of the work and deliberations of the commission would happen in the public meeting environment. And we typically, at least for a portion of that, would involve an opportunity to solicit public comment from stakeholders, and then have a facilitated conversation for a portion of that, where we will bring someone in to just help kind of tee up some key questions so that all of you can kind of engage with each other around your individual perspectives on what you think is important and the things that you would like the agency to consider in the development process. One of the powers of having a commission, from my perspective, is we are oftentimes, in the best way, very much preoccupied with the day-to-day operations, and having, especially when you don't have enough resources to do everything, having commissioners be able to ask key strategic questions and think about kind of the more big picture about the work that we're doing, so we can make sure that we're taking the appropriate approaches to being able to serve as many folks as possible. one of the things that I've teed up before, and it's worth repeating, one of the more difficult decisions that we may grapple with in the area of older mind and independent living, we've been asking for additional resources for some time, and we haven't been successful getting additional teachers for the older blind independent living program. We have been trying to serve the entire state, which as costs go up and our resources are flat, that becomes more and more increasingly difficult. It may be that one of the policy considerations for the commission is many states who are similarly situated do not serve the entire state. They focus on more geographically dense areas where you can get serve as many folks as possible. That has it makes some sense on paper. It also makes me sick to my stomach, if I'm being honest, because that means that folks, through no fault of their own, are residing in areas that are more rural and remote, and they may not get access to basic independent living services. But if we don't have enough to do everything for everyone, those are the kind of difficult decisions that we may come to the commission and ask for your guidance and leadership to help us try to make some of those more challenging decisions. Any other questions or thoughts or reactions?
Stephanie,
Yes, Stephanie.
so you're not at that phase yet about asking that question yet, right? Is that what you're saying?
We are not, I mean, we are always at that stage, but we will have we will actually structure it and tee up those kinds of conversations around what we would like to be doing. At this point, we are still making every attempt to serve the entire state.
Because that's going to be very hard because, commission is probably the only resource blind people have right now.
Yes.
That's hard.
It's very hard. I can't even hardly say it out loud. That's how hard it is for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is Scott. I wonder, are there states that have that model locally, or is there, somewhere to look at that as an option? Some states that are doing that either successfully or not at all?
Yeah, that's a great question. One of the things that is a challenge for Oregon is that it's a relatively small populous state, and there are some states, many states will have nonprofit infrastructure where they may have private sources of funding that have some basic level of services for individuals that is funded outside of the federal state system. Oregon is not situated in being able to offer those types of services. So we are literally, to Stephanie's point, the only game in town if you're a senior and need assistance.
Which means if the commission doesn't offer it, then people are not going to have anything.
Yes. Yes. I can't even. Yeah.
I'm at a loss of words.
I know.
Daisha.
I know. Me too. Me too.
Okay. Well, but we're not there yet.
We're not, yeah, I just want to encourage your thinking and kind of processing around some of these more challenging conversations that we have to date been able to at least delay or avoid temporarily. And Madam Chair, I'm happy to move into the next topic under old business if you'd like.
Okay, which is an action item, and it's the order of selection implementation. Yes.
Yes, we might as well continue the challenging conversation that started under the strategic planning topic. The next area is order of selection. You will recall that we've been talking about this for several meetings now. And it is the reality that over time, our resources in the vocational rehabilitation program have been fairly flat and have really outstripped any cost of living increases that we've received at the federal level. And the cost of doing business, the cost of goods and services, we've all been living with inflation. Inflation is a real thing. And the cost of staff, the cost of personnel services has also increased. And we provided you with a couple of meetings with some fairly detailed information around what those costs have looked like and where the trends have been going. And the reality is that it's becoming increasingly clear that our ability to serve all eligible Oregonians in the vocational rehabilitation program at the time they need services is going to cease sooner rather than later. And so this process, which you now know is called order of selection, that if you will recall, there are two vocational rehabilitation agencies in Oregon, one that serves all other disabilities other than blindness. And we exercise in Oregon the right under the Rehabilitation Act to have what's called a separate agency for the blind, which is us. And the general agency, which we affectionately call them under the Department of Human Services, entered order of selection in June of this year. So they are slightly ahead of us. And for the same reasons, the cost of doing services exceeded their available resources. And so they entered into the order of selection process in June of this year. And commissioners, as we kind of were talking through the mechanics of running an organization and needing some level of sufficient reserves to just be able to keep the lights on and pay your bills and pay your staff. And we think it is prudent for us to start preparing to enter an order of selection sometime in early 2026. So really planning on finishing out the year and then moving into a waitlist situation. And so the mechanics of that, Angel's going to walk through a little bit about that, but so what this would mean is an order of selection means as folks apply for services, we would assess their priority level based on their needs for rehabilitation services and the significance of the barriers that they have related to employment. And by federal law, we would start serving individuals with the most significant needs of services and barriers to employment first. Our goal always is and will always be to serve as many Oregonians as possible as soon as possible. And that is across the board. That is why we are here. That's what gets us up every day. And what order of selection does is it allows us to control the flow of folks through the front door and allows us to make sure that we can maintain our commitments that we currently have to individuals who have already applied and are receiving services before we take on additional obligations. And it is a way to be able to manage your finances so you're able to control the costs and the flow of services. Worst case scenario that we would avoid at all costs, and agencies have done it and it just is not great, is if you do not plan for this thoughtfully, you run out of money and you can't keep your current obligations to existing consumers who are in college and doing whatever they need to do to help them go back to work. And so it is way better for us to start doing these projections early on and go into an order of selection when we need to, which we think we should. And that is our recommendation that you consider approving us to move in this direction. And we would only stay in an order of selection until at which point we could reasonably feel good that we can serve all eligible individuals going forward. There's been only one time in my 25 years that we were in an order of selection here at OCB. That was in the 2005-2008 time period. And we were able to manage through that process successfully. And as soon as we knew that we could serve everyone, we left the order of selection and changed the process. Before I turn it over to Angel, and to give you a sense as to the mechanics of what the action item would be that you would be approving, I want to make sure there's not any questions about order of selection in general.
Stephanie.
Yes, Stephanie.
So I'm a little confused.
Okay.
So special needs and employable. What does that mean?
Yeah, great question. So at the time of application, Congress basically, and it's unique to the Rehabilitation Act and the Vocational Rehabilitation Program. Basically, because vocational rehabilitation is a specialized program that really is designed, it's a workforce program designed for individuals with disabilities. Congress basically says that you have to serve individuals with the most significant needs first. And which goes a little bit against common sense, because some people are like, well, why wouldn't you serve the people that are quicker and cheaper first and get them out the door?
Because most of those are not employable.
And the other challenge is, in theory, if you don't need specialized intensive rehabilitation services, you might be able to get help from another workforce program other than vocational rehabilitation. So that's a little bit of the logic. So at the time of eligibility, Stephanie, counselors will go through and identify individuals' barriers to employment once they're determined eligible. And then the nature, the kind of this types of services and the extent of services that that individual will need.
Okay.
And they will be placed in a priority category. So individuals that have more barriers and a higher level of types of service needs. So mobility, technology, techniques of daily living, those types of categories, then they would get served first. So if an individual had fewer needs, fewer barriers, they would be placed lower on the priority level and be waiting for services potentially over individuals who have higher needs.
So say a person that is blind, autistic, mentally ill would get the services as if someone was just blind first.
If assuming that there were barriers that the first individual you identified with other disabilities in addition to blindness had a higher level of barriers and service requirements, the answer would be yes. That's not always the case. One of the things to think about is the majority of individuals that come through our doors for vocational rehabilitation with their primary disability being blindness, they are new to blindness, and they also have a high level of service needs because they need not only job training, but they also will oftentimes require blindness specific training services in multiple areas.
Okay.
And that would also be a high service need.
Okay.
This is Nadir. Can I just piggyback off that slightly?
Sure.
I have a question. So, out of curiosity, even in terms of blindness specifically, would there be a difference in, say, a person who is classified as legally blind but still has some functional vision, as opposed to someone who has no functional vision? Would that person then be categorized as having a more serious need?
Yeah, that is a very good question. It is probably less about that than if, let's say, in theory, someone who is completely blind, who has had all of the training in mobility and technology could have very few barriers to employment because they've already received all the training that they need and may just need job search assistance.
Okay.
So it is not so much disability specific as it's situational specific to that individual. And that's why it's done as part of the eligibility process. If that makes sense. That's a very good question. Other questions? One of the things that we will share with you that we were able to secure some funding through what is called a reallotment or redistribution of federal funds. If other states are not able to match their full federal award, we were able to kind of piece together and get basically about 3 months of funding that through a reallotment of resources, which is basically we got a little bit extra federal fiscal year 25 funds, not even realizing that we were going to be hitting a federal government shutdown. And without that, we would be an extra, we would be very, very strapped for federal cash. That's why we have the additional cushion of just having a few months time period to just be able to do this right. But we knew the reason why we started talking about it with you in April is because we knew it was coming. We just didn't know what we didn't know in terms of the time frame. And we just want to be thoughtful about proceeding forward. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Angel, and she's going to talk about, again, the action item. What we decided is we would say to you, we would like your approval to move forward with the implementation, and Angel's going to talk about what that implementation actually means.
Great. Okay. Good afternoon, commissioners. It's really good to be with you this afternoon. Yeah, I just kind of what I would like to do is just sort of start with where we are right now, which is we're in, and as you know, because we started presenting to you the data collection. So we're like in this data collection process of figuring out what's happening in terms of year over year. As you know, we've been increasing the number of clients that are knocking on our door in all of the programs, and it does include vocational rehabilitation. But more importantly, even than that, we have understood from the data that we are spending more and more per client, primarily because everything has increased in terms of cost. And some of the big buckets that you might imagine that we did share in your April meeting were technology being one that is a huge expenditure, but a huge need, and one of the primary tools that are used by people who experience blindness in order to level the playing field, especially as it relates to independence and work. And then job development and job coaching services, which again are very essential for clients for whom we were just talking that may have multiple barriers to employment and need that extra kind of someone to be alongside them and figuring out kind of next steps for what jobs they're going to be applying for, and then being able to learn the tasks of the job. Those are some of the big buckets that we are finding expenditures going up pretty exponentially, but it is across the board. Everything has gotten more expensive, and I don't think any of us would be denying that that's happening in our own real lives. And then the other thing that we've been in the middle of is education. Which we've done with you all along the way, and also with our staff, and making sure that they know that this is where we're at and that we're going to be okay. we're going to be okay. We do know that we are ready to make the ask to move into the order of selection at the end of beginning of next year, somewhere in there. We do so the primary reason that we're meeting with you about this topic today is to do exactly what Daisha said and to get the approval from you all to make the next steps. And so I just want to talk to you about what that looks like. Once we are able to get the order of selection approved by you, we need to then have an engagement with the Rehabilitation Services Administration. We do need to get permission from them after we get permission from you. And as we engage with them, we'll be having some initial conversations and providing the data that we have been collecting to make sure that they understand why we're moving into the order alongside many other agencies throughout the nation, including our sister agency, as Daisha had mentioned. And part of that process is that we will have to submit a new state plan, which you all do get engaged with in terms of we will have some processes that happen in relationship to that state plan development and submittal. But that is the formal ask for us to be able to move into the order. And Jonathan is here today, and he is our primary point person in the submission of the state plan. So I was going to give you a moment, Jonathan, to be able to just speak to the processes there, and then I'll take back over presenting next steps.
Sure thing. Good afternoon, commissioners. It's good to be with you again. Again, in terms of context, we did submit a state plan for program years 24 to 27, and there is a modification required midway through that cycle. The commission is in a position where we can actually combine our request for order of selection with that mid-year modification as well. In the modification and the request for order of selection, we'll be updating a number of sections, including our goals, and most importantly, our annual spend forecast. And that's done in conjunction with the VR program, but also the fiscal side of OCB as well. So those numbers will all be in alignment. There are some other minor updates, such as business relations, new strategies that we've engaged to connect with businesses or potential employers, things along those lines. So we'll see some minor tweaks to other sections. But goals and priorities, and then the fiscal forecast are the two most important. We do anticipate a rough draft being completed within the next 30 calendar days, and then we'll make some fine-tuning the next couple of weeks after that, so we can get that submitted off to our friends in the federal agency. Angel, was there anything else you were hoping to cover?
Yeah, just I think the only other pieces are that you will be hearing from us as we begin to engage around that state plan process, which would be there will be some public hearings that we'll be wanting to get feedback from clients and let them know what is happening, make sure that they know the updates that are happening to the state plan, and incorporate any of their feedback before we do a final submission. And that will you will also be welcome to be present at any of those. We'll likely do one. We have a built-in audience, as you might recall from prior state plans and public hearings, when we have the training center right here as part of our environment. We do love to invite our clients that are actively engaged in the training center to a hearing, and then we will have a component that is going to be remote as well, so that any clients throughout the state will be able to participate in that feedback session. So that is one of the other pieces that happens as part of the state plan submission process. Before we go to the next things, are there any questions for Jonathan or I about the state plan? You will likely be hearing more about that in your next board meeting, so stay tuned if you don't have any questions right now. All right, thank you, Jonathan. All right. So then what next after we get the permission from RSA to be able to go into the order of selection, which we anticipate there will be some questions back and forth based on other states, other VR agencies and our sister agencies' own experience. So that may take a little bit of back and forth to make sure that we've gotten all of the elements they would like us to be sure that we've provided to them before we are able to then get ready to move into the order. One of the elements of going into the order, there are some cost containment efforts that are already underway, particularly in the areas of technology, but also in the area of coaching and job development. In some other areas as well. A lot of those are happening month by month. As an example, I do meet monthly with all of the counselors, and we're reviewing cases, looking at where we are at in terms of current expenditures that are happening and the needs of clients. Most of the time, we're spending money, I mean, very appropriately based on client needs, and there is nothing we would want to do in terms of impacting client services. But if there are things that we're kind of going, we've been doing this for a little while, like maybe we've been in job development for, over 6 months and we haven't had any leads that have resulted in an employment offer, then we might be having some conversations, or we will be having some conversations about, are there strategies that we can be doing differently? Are there internal resources that we can be using in terms of our business relations team? Or maybe there's additional training that is needing to happen before a client is really ready to engage in that job search process. So we're having those kinds of conversations. We are also meeting with our partners who are in the business of providing technology and making sure that we are matching the needs of our clients with the technologies that we are providing. So some of those cost containment things, strategies are happening currently, and that will be ongoing as we go throughout the order. It's something that's important for us to do anyway, but it is very important when we're in this time of making sure that we're really meeting each client's needs, and especially as we're looking at putting people on a wait list for services. We will need to train staff on our processes, and so that is going to be a lift to begin with, but it is also going to be ongoing because as we move through the order of selection and maybe we open up categories, then we will need to keep doing additional training, and we'll need to be training and supporting staff all along the way because this is going to be a new way of doing business. So constant communication with not just staff, but also our partners and clients, making sure that they're aware of where we are in the process. So there will be a level of vigilance. You may see more communications depending on where you are in relationship to client services. And just also you all as our valued commissioners may have some level of engagement in the process as well, and really encouraging clients to reach out to us if they have questions, and making sure that their needs are getting met to the best of our ability, even while we're going through the order of selection, or that they know what to expect in terms of potentially, if as we know them, the timelines and how we may be opening up categories. Then there's going to be the actual implementation. So we have a case management system. They have the Aware Case Management System. Alliance is our vendor, and they have helped multiple states throughout the nation to be able to go into the order and manage the order from a level of case management and setting up the categories, and then being able to open them up based on the assessments that we're doing, both about client services, but also where we are fiscally. So that's something we will be working closely with Alliance around, and making sure that we are set to go in the case management system, and that, again, staff know how to operate within the case management system to be able to functionalize the order of selection. And I think the next big thing is just going to be the ongoingness, not just of the communication, as I mentioned, but we will be doing monthly and then quarterly reviews of where we're at in terms of client services, when and if we are going to open up categories or close categories. People do, with the states do go back and forth between opening and closing categories sometimes because they're feeling like, oh, it looks like we are doing pretty good and we've got some expendable monies in the VR system, and we open up a category and then again, because of the level and the amount of expenditures that can happen on a case-by-case basis, we may need to close down again and be able to then hopefully open those back up again. So it is not a one-size-fits-all throughout the entire process of the order of selection. It is going to be something we're monitoring and being able to adjust based on what we're seeing in the landscape, both with clients who are queuing up in the waiting list and then also what's happening fiscally. And it'll be ongoing communication with all of you as well. We will, this will be a standing item that we'll be covering in all of your board meetings. So I think that is a pretty good synopsis of where we're at and where we're heading. We really do appreciate your consideration as you're asked to approve us being able to now go into the next steps of going into the order of selection and working with the Rehabilitation Services Administration around that process. And I will hand it back to Daisha unless there are questions.
Additional questions? Angel or Jonathan or myself?
Any question? No? Okay, so let me get my language straight. So what we're doing is looking for a motion to approve the agency moving forward with the implementation of the order of selection process, right?
Very good.
Okay, yay. All right, so any motions, commissioners?
This is Laurel. I'll make a motion to move ahead with the selection and everything else Nadira just said.
Thank you, Laurel. I'm looking for a second.
This is Stephanie. I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Stephanie. Max?
Yes. So Nadira, your vote.
I approve, yes.
Lillian. Laurel is a yes. Dr. Labram.
I approve.
Stephanie.
I approve.
Scott Wall.
I approve.
The motion passes.
Thank you, Max. All right. So we will move forward now with the review of the annual performance measure progress report.
Yes, well, good afternoon again, commissioners. This is Angel. And I am just wanting to make sure that you kind of, on a high level, know that we have submitted the annual performance progress report for what is actually federal fiscal year 24. And the reason that it is that year, just as a reminder, or for those of you who haven't been through this process before, the data, because we do not have data before October 1st at the soonest for the federal fiscal year, which would be this past year was 2025, that runs from October 1st to September 30th. That annual performance progress report is due to the legislature by the 30th of September. So we just simply don't have all of the data to submit until a year later. So it is a bit of a lag time in case it ever gets confusing. We use that federal fiscal year data for all of the measures except for the first one, which is a program year data, not to be too confusing, but this is the way that we have reported as a federally funded agency, or primarily federally funded agency and program. So that said, so for the first measure that we report.
Please stand by. The speaker's microphone failed, but they will resume speaking without a break in the presentation in about 1.5 minutes.
Angel has froze. I'm going to give her a second, and if not, I can move into reviewing the APPR. The joys of Zoom. Angel, you're muted. I think you went in and came back. You were off mute briefly.
Okay, that's very strange. It keeps just muting me.
It does not want you to do this final thing.
Okay, I'm gonna toggle over to my notes and hopefully I'll toggle back over if I need to unmute again. Um, okay, all right. So just to say that wherever I left off, I think we do have a internal measure that we are making sure that we know where we're at in terms of our where we stand for the program year for the second quarter after someone is closed or second quarter after exit. This is something that we also do report to the Rehabilitation Services Administration. But again, because all WIOA partners have to agree and we don't have a target, we're actually just using wherever we are in terms of our measure to put into the APPR, and we don't have a target that's actually staying steady right now because there's not agreement amongst the state partners yet about what that would look like. The other thing to point out about this particular measure is that it actually measures, interestingly, not just clients who have closed successfully or clients who have gained employment, but clients who have not. Which is a significant number of clients, often because there's a lot that goes into our lives, and there are clients that will often leave the VR system, and they may have lots of reasons for doing that. It could be that they're moving out of state, which we see a lot of, particularly even post COVID. But also just lots of multiple reasons. Clients maybe decide that they just want to stay on their Social Security net for now, or there's other mitigating factors in their lives. But this measure, which is one of the reasons it's been hard to land a state target, does measure all clients who close, not just those who had an employment outcome. So we were at 42% in the last program year. And then the next measure that we have in our annual performance progress report is, let me get down here. For ILOB, so we do have a measure that allows us to check in with our clients during after their closure, and this one measures the number of clients or the percent of clients who feel that they are in greater control and more confident in their ability to maintain their current living situation as a result of getting OCB services, and 94% of people did report that they are able to live independently, more independently as a result of OCB services. And then we have our customer satisfaction surveys. This one, I'll let you go through all of the different elements, but the one that I did want to highlight was our overall customer satisfaction, which we combine both our independent living and our VR satisfaction surveys. And for that one, we were almost at 90%, which I think is a good marker at 89.4%. And then the final one that you all are participants around, and thank you very much, is the commission best practices. And you have evaluated us to have met 100% of our best practices as a commission. So really appreciate your engagement in the process. And we have submitted this already. So there's no engagement around changing the report. But if there are any questions around the report, I'm sure happy to answer. Any questions? All right, I appreciate. I guess the universe did let me actually do that report. So thank you very much, and I will hand it back over to our chair.
Okay, thank you, Angela. And those are finally numbers that I like today. Good numbers.
Good.
All right. Okay, so does anyone have any further comments or questions here? Because we've reached the end of the agenda items. No? Okay, all right, hearing none and there being no further business. It is currently 2:32 p.m. and this meeting is adjourned. Have a wonderful weekend, everyone. Thank you.